Buy my scooter, ma'am, please. Daddy hasn't eaten in 2 days. Those words pierced through the cold Boston air like a whisper from heaven, or a curse Scarlett Monroe didn't expect to hear that morning. She had just stepped out of her black limousine, heels clicking against the wet pavement, her assistant following close behind with a steaming cup of latte. Scarlett was used to morning chaos, stock prices, client calls, board meetings, but not this. In front of the towering glass building of Monroe and Dalton Marketing, a little girl stood beside a red scooter. Her hands were trembling, her cheeks flushed from the cold, her brown curls sticking to her face from the drizzle. She couldn't have been older than 8. Next to her, a hand-drawn cardboard sign rested against the scooter's wheel. For sale, $20. Scarlett froze. The girl's eyes, big, bright, and desperate, were staring right into hers. "Please, miss," the girl whispered again. "I just want to buy food for my dad." Scarlett felt her throat tighten, though she didn't yet understand why. The chauffeur glanced awkwardly toward her, waiting for a signal to move. People walked past, some pretending not to see. Scarlett adjusted her coat, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest. "Let's go," she said flatly. But as she entered the revolving door, she caught one last glimpse, the little girl clutching the scooter like it was her last friend on earth. Inside the elevator, the air felt heavier. The name Dalton flashed across her mind, but she quickly dismissed it. There were hundreds of employees she'd let go in the past year. She had made the hard decisions. Someone had to. That's what leaders did. At least that's what she told herself. Meanwhile, outside, Matthew Dalton sat on a bench across the street, his head lowered, his hands covered in grease from odd jobs he'd been trying to find. He didn't know Chloe had gone back to that building, the one that once gave him hope and later took everything away. The irony was cruel. Scarlett Monroe, the woman who fired him without notice, now walked past his daughter every morning without knowing it. Fate has a strange way of weaving stories together. That morning, as the first snowflakes began to fall, something shifted. Scarlett couldn't focus during her meeting. Her assistant's voice blurred into noise as she kept seeing those eyes, Chloe's eyes. Innocent, pleading, and strangely familiar. At lunchtime, she looked out from her office window, down to the sidewalk where she'd seen the girl. The scooter was still there, leaning against a street lamp. But the girl was gone. Only the small cardboard sign remained, soaked by rain. Something inside Scarlett cracked open. That night, while driving home to her luxurious apartment overlooking the Charles River, she couldn't shake the echo of that voice. "Daddy hasn't eaten in 2 days." She had heard thousands of stories of poverty before, on TV, in charity galas, in documentaries, but never so close, never from eyes that seemed to look straight into her soul. And for the first time in years, Scarlett Monroe felt something she hadn't felt since her own childhood. Guilt and fear. Fear that maybe her success had a price. Fear that the life she built on ambition was built on someone else's suffering. She poured herself a glass of wine that night, but it didn't calm her. The city lights reflected in the glass, dancing like ghosts of people she'd forgotten. And among them, one face stood out, the face of a little girl holding a red scooter. Scarlett didn't know yet that the girl was Chloe Dalton, daughter of the man she'd once fired to protect her company's profit margins. But soon she would find out. And when she did, nothing in her perfect, calculated world would ever be the same. I'm John Parker, and today's story will touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give your like. It's very important to me. And leave in the comments which city or country you're listening from. The next morning, Scarlett arrived at her office earlier than usual. Boston was still half asleep. Streets glistened under a thin veil of frost, and the air carried that biting chill that seeps into your bones. She kept thinking she'd imagined the little girl, that maybe it was guilt playing tricks on her mind. But as her car stopped at the same corner, her heart skipped. There she was again. Chloe stood beside the same red scooter, her tiny hands red from the cold. She wasn't begging, just waiting, as if hope itself had told her to stay. Scarlett hesitated. This time she stepped out of the car without a word to her driver. "Hey," Scarlett called softly. "Why are you out here again?" Chloe turned, startled, but smiled faintly. "Because no one bought it yesterday. And Daddy said if I sell it, we can get food and medicine for Ben." Scarlett's breath caught. Ben, a brother. A sick one, probably. She felt something twist inside her chest. The girl looked so fragile and brave at the same time that Scarlett's polished composure began to crack. She crouched to meet Chloe's eyes. "What's your name?" "Chloe." "Chloe what?" "Chloe Dalton." Scarlett's knees nearly gave out. That name again, Dalton. The elevator memory flashed back like lightning. Matthew Dalton. The mechanic she'd let go after a budget cut. He'd pleaded for one more month, said he had kids that he could work extra hours. But Scarlett's accountant had insisted. He's not efficient enough. And Scarlett, pragmatic as ever, had signed the termination form without hesitation. Now, the consequence of that decision stood in front of her. Small, shivering and selling her scooter for food. Scarlett swallowed hard. "Where's your dad now, Chloe?" "At home," the girl said softly. "He's tired. He doesn't talk much anymore." Scarlett wanted to speak, to apologize, to do something, but words tangled in her throat. She reached for her wallet. "Here," she said, handing the girl a $50 bill. "Keep your scooter and get something to eat." Chloe shook her head. "I can't. Daddy says we don't take money we don't earn." Scarlett froze. The words cut deeper than any accusation could. We don't take what we don't earn. It was the kind of dignity that no hunger could destroy, and the kind of dignity Scarlett had lost somewhere along the way. Before she could reply, a faint voice called from across the street. "Chloe!" Scarlett turned and saw a man limping slightly, his jacket torn, his face tired but kind. Matthew Dalton. Older than she remembered, thinner but unmistakable. He rushed toward Chloe, panic in his eyes. "Chloe, what did I tell you? You can't be out here." "I just wanted to help, Daddy," she said. Clutching his hand, Scarlett watched speechless, as the man she'd once dismissed as just another employee now stood before her. Not as a worker, but as a father doing everything he could to keep his children alive. Matthew recognized her instantly. His face stiffened. "Miss Monroe," he said, his voice calm but heavy. "Didn't expect to see you again." Scarlett opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She wanted to say she was sorry, but sorry felt too small, too late. "I didn't know," she began. He gave a hollow laugh. "No one ever does." Chloe looked between them, confused. "You know my daddy?" Scarlett nodded slowly. "Yes, Chloe, I do." Silence fell between them, thick and uncomfortable. The city noise faded away. It was just the three of them, the woman who made the decision, the man who paid the price, and the child caught in between. "Come on, honey," Matthew said gently. "Let's go home." They turned to leave, but before they walked away, Scarlett called out, "Wait." She reached into her coat pocket and took out a business card. "Matthew, please, call me. I can help." He looked at her, exhausted but proud. "With all due respect, Miss Monroe, we've had enough of your kind of help." And with that he walked away, holding Chloe's hand as the red scooter squeaked along the wet sidewalk. Scarlett stood there, frozen, her heart pounding with something she hadn't felt in years, shame. She looked down at the card still in her hand and realized something terrifying. For the first time, her money couldn't fix what was broken. But Scarlett Monroe wasn't the kind of woman who gave up easily. And that night, as she looked at her reflection, in the window, a reflection that seemed colder and older than she remembered, she made a decision. She would find a way to make things right. What she didn't know was that her attempt to help would uncover a secret about Matthew Dalton's firing, a secret that would turn her world upside down. Scarlett didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Chloe's face, her trembling hands, the scooter, the cardboard sign soaked in rain. The guilt was unbearable. For years she had told herself that firing people was part of business, that success demanded sacrifice, but now those sacrifices had faces and names. The next morning she arrived at her office before dawn. The skyline of Boston still shimmered with the last traces of fog. She poured herself a black coffee and opened her laptop, her fingers hesitating over the keyboard. She typed Matthew Dalton into the company's HR database. The file appeared gray and forgotten. Termination date, March 17th. Reason, budget adjustment, low performance. But as Scarlett scrolled further, her eyes narrowed. Attached to the report was an internal memo she didn't remember approving. It read, "Employee dismissed per CFO recommendation. Personal conflict with Executive Director, S. Monroe." Scarlett frowned. Conflict? That wasn't true. She had never spoken directly to Matthew about his dismissal. She opened her email archives, searching for any communication between her and the HR team from that period. What she found made her blood run cold. Her chief financial officer at the time, Elliot Briggs, had sent a message marked confidential. Matthew Dalton discovered irregularities in the equipment budget. He's been asking questions. We might need to let him go before he causes trouble. I'll handle the paperwork. Don't worry about it. Scarlett's eyes widened. She remembered Elliot. Arrogant, smug, always whispering about efficiency. He'd left the company months ago with a generous severance package. She had trusted him completely. But now it was clear. Matthew hadn't been fired because of performance. He'd been silenced. Scarlett slammed her laptop shut, her pulse racing. Oh God, what did we do to him? Later that morning, she couldn't focus on anything. Her assistant asked about meetings, clients, reports. She dismissed them all. Something inside her demanded she act, and for once it wasn't ambition driving her. It was conscience. By noon, Scarlett was standing in front of a rundown building on the south side of the city. The mailbox read Dalton. She hesitated before knocking. Her heart pounded. She didn't even know what she was going to say. The door opened slightly. Ben, the older brother, stood there wary. His clothes were clean but worn, and his eyes carried that same quiet sadness as his sister's. "Can I help you?" he asked politely. Scarlett smiled nervously. "Hi, I'm looking for your father, Matthew." Ben frowned. "Are you from the electric company?" "No," she said quickly. "No, I'm an old acquaintance." He hesitated, then opened the door wider. Inside, Scarlett saw the small apartment, peeling wallpaper, an empty fridge humming weakly, and Matthew sitting at a table with a pile of unpaid bills. When he looked up and saw her, his jaw clenched. "Miss Monroe." "Matthew," she said softly. "I came to apologize." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold. "You don't need to." "What's done is done." "No," she insisted, taking a step closer. "It's not. I found something, an email. You were fired because you discovered something, weren't you?" Matthew's silence was answer enough. He sighed. "I found out that your CFO was stealing money from the company. I had proof. I thought if I showed it to you, you'd fix it. But instead, I got fired the next week." Scarlett's chest tightened. Shame burned in her throat. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." Matthew gave a tired smile. "You didn't ask either." For a long moment, they said nothing. The hum of the old refrigerator was the only sound. Then Chloe came running from the hallway, holding her red scooter. "Daddy, look who's here. The lady from yesterday." Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. She knelt and hugged the girl gently. "Hi, Chloe." The warmth of that small hug pierced her like light breaking through clouds. She turned to Matthew. "Let me make this right, please. I can reopen the investigation, pay what you're owed, get your job back." He shook his head. "It's not about the money anymore." "Then what is it?" He looked at her with weary eyes. "It's about trust." "You took that away." Scarlett felt her composure crumble. For the first time in years, she didn't have a plan or a script. She simply stood there, stripped of her titles and pride, facing the man whose life she had unknowingly shattered. But she wouldn't walk away this time. "I can't undo the past," she said quietly. "But maybe I can change what comes next." Matthew studied her for a moment, searching her face for sincerity. Finally, he nodded once. "Then start by proving it." Scarlett left the apartment with a promise in her heart, not just to clear Matthew's name, but to confront the very corruption she'd turned a blind eye to. As she stepped back into the freezing wind, she didn't know that her decision to dig deeper would soon put her own reputation and her life at risk. Scarlett Monroe had faced corporate rivals, courtroom threats and media scandals, but nothing felt as heavy as the silence inside her penthouse that night. The city lights of Boston glittered beneath her floor-to-ceiling windows, but she didn't see beauty. She saw consequences. The documents spread across her dining table told a story she'd ignored for too long. Names, contracts, missing funds, and Elliot Briggs's signature stamped across them like a ghost from her past. She poured herself a glass of water, not wine this time. For once she needed clarity, not escape. The thought of Chloe's tiny hands clutching that scooter pushed her forward. Scarlett opened her laptop again and began compiling evidence, emails, transfers, inconsistencies in budgets. Her fingers trembled slightly, realizing that exposing this could destroy her company's reputation and her career. But how could she continue living, knowing her success had come from someone else's suffering? The next morning, she arrived at Monroe and Dalton Marketing with a purpose her team hadn't seen in years. Her heels echoed through the marble lobby as she strode past her assistant, who tried to keep up. "Cancel my meetings," Scarlett said firmly. "I want the full accounting records from March through August of last year. Every expense, every signature, every authorization from the finance department." Her assistant blinked. "Ma'am, that's over 200 files, then start printing," Scarlett interrupted. By noon, her desk was covered in paper. Numbers danced in front of her eyes. But patterns began to emerge. Inflated equipment costs, non-existent contractors, payments funneled to a shell company, EB Consulting, EB Elliott Briggs. Scarlett leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You bastard," she muttered. She picked up her phone and dialed her current CFO, a cautious man named Daniel Wexler. "Daniel, I need you to look into past transfers authorized under Elliott's tenure, privately." "Privately," he repeated. "Scarlett, if there's something wrong, we should go to the board." "Not yet," she said. "I want the truth first. Then we decide who deserves to know." When she hung up, she caught her reflection in the glass wall. Her expression was different. Not the confident CEO mask, but a woman facing the cracks in her own empire. That evening, she drove to the Dalton neighborhood again. She parked a block away, watching as Matthew's apartment light flickered. She didn't knock this time. She just sat there, wondering how to tell him that she'd uncovered the betrayal he'd tried to warn her about years ago. A soft tap startled her, Chloe at the car window, smiling shyly. "Miss Scarlett, are you spying on us?" Scarlett laughed despite herself. "Maybe a little." "Daddy says you're the boss lady," Chloe said proudly. "But you don't look mean." That comment hit harder than expected. "I used to be," Scarlett admitted, "but I'm trying not to be anymore." Matthew appeared at the doorway, arms crossed. "You're persistent." "I found proof," she said quickly, stepping out of the car. "Elliott Briggs stole from both of us. He forged the report that got you fired." Matthew's jaw tightened. "I told them." No one listened. "I'm listening now," she said. "But I need your help to prove it." He hesitated. "Why should I help you?" "Because if we don't, he gets away with everything, and your kids grow up believing the world never changes." That silenced him. Finally, he nodded. "What do you need?" "Everything you remember. Names, invoices, anyone who questioned the numbers." They talked for nearly an hour, Chloe and Ben occasionally peeking through the curtain. Scarlett wrote notes feverishly. For the first time, she wasn't the executive giving orders. She was a woman searching for redemption. When she left, Matthew walked her to the car. "If you're serious about this," he said, "be careful. Elliott has friends, the kind that make problems disappear." Scarlett smiled faintly. "So do I." But that night, as she entered her building's underground garage, she noticed something strange. A black SUV idling near the exit. Its tinted windows reflected her headlights. When she parked, the SUV rolled away slowly, vanishing into the street. A chill ran down her spine. Maybe Matthew was right. The next morning, a courier delivered an unmarked envelope to Scarlett's office. Inside was a single sheet of paper with bold, typewritten words, "Stop digging or you'll regret it." Her hands trembled, but her resolve didn't. She folded the paper neatly and placed it in her drawer. "Let's see how far you're willing to go." "Elliott?" she whispered. What she didn't know was that the person threatening her wasn't Elliott Briggs. It was someone much closer, someone inside her own company who stood to lose everything if the truth came out. The next morning, the air inside Monroe and Dalton felt different. Whispers followed Scarlett wherever she went, like static in the hallways. Her assistants' nervous glances, the tight smiles from department heads. Everyone could sense something was shifting at the top. Scarlett entered her office and found Daniel Wexler, her CFO already waiting by the window. His usual calm demeanor was gone. "Scarlett, we need to talk," he said in a low voice. "I ran the numbers you asked for." "You were right, there are discrepancies. Big ones." "How big?" she asked. "Hundreds of thousands. But that's not all. Some of the transactions were authorized after Elliott Briggs left." Scarlett froze. "That's impossible." Daniel shook his head. Someone inside continued the same pattern. The same shell accounts. Someone who knows your passwords, your approval codes. Her blood turned cold. Are you saying someone is forging my signature? Daniel hesitated. Yes. And whoever it is, they're still in this building. Scarlett's pulse pounded in her ears. Her first thought was of the warning note. Stop digging or you'll regret it. She'd assumed it came from Elliot. But if the fraud continued after he left, someone closer was pulling the strings. Who has that level of access? She demanded. Daniel's expression darkened. Your vice president, Laura Keene. She's been overseeing finance approvals since Elliot's departure. Scarlett's stomach dropped. Laura had been with her for 10 years. Loyal, ambitious, always calling her Scar. They'd shared vacations, family dinners, secrets. The betrayal felt personal. Get me everything, Scarlett said sharply. Every record, every message between her and Elliot. That night she stayed in her office long after everyone left. The city glowed outside, streets shimmering with wet reflections. She opened Laura's archived emails. The more she read, the more her hands shook. Hidden beneath polite correspondence was an encrypted thread between Laura and Elliot. She suspects nothing. Keep the transfers small. I'll handle her if she gets too close. You'd better. The Dalton incident almost blew it last time. Don't worry. She trusts me completely. Scarlett felt the air leave her lungs. The Dalton incident. They'd mentioned it like it was a minor inconvenience. Matthew's firing, his suffering, Chloe's hunger, all reduced to collateral damage. She slammed her laptop shut and buried her face in her hands. I built this empire and now it's built on lies. The next morning she drove straight to Matthew's apartment. Her eyes were tired, her hands shaking slightly on the wheel. When he opened the door, she didn't wait for permission. They were still stealing, she said breathlessly, even after Elliot left. My own vice president, Laura Keene, she's behind it. Matthew frowned. And you have proof? Scarlett nodded. Emails, bank records, everything. I'm going to the board tomorrow. He looked at her with concern. Scarlett, that's dangerous. If she's been covering this up for years, she won't go down quietly. I don't care, Scarlett said firmly. I can't keep living like this. Chloe appeared behind her father, rubbing her eyes. Miss Scarlett. Scarlett smiled softly. Hey, sweetheart, I brought you something. She handed Chloe a small box, a brand new red helmet. For your scooter. Safety first, the little girl gasped. Thank you. Matthew watched the exchange silently. He saw something different in Scarlett now. The cold, untouchable CEO was gone. This woman was human. The next day, the boardroom felt like a battlefield. Scarlett stood at the head of the table, documents spread before her. Laura sat across from her, perfectly composed, her eyes like polished glass. I called this meeting, Scarlett began, because our company has been used for criminal activity. I have evidence that funds were stolen under the leadership of Elliot Briggs and continued under Laura Keene's supervision. Laura's smile didn't waver. That's a serious accusation, Scarlett. Do you have proof? Scarlett opened her laptop, projecting the emails onto the large screen. The room fell silent. Each line appeared like a dagger in the air. Laura's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. No, you made a mistake, Scarlett said coldly. You thought I'd never find out. Laura rose slowly from her seat. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand enough, Scarlett replied. Security will escort you out. But before she could finish, Laura leaned close and whispered, her voice venomous. You think this is over? You have no idea who you're protecting. Then she walked out, heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving a trail of silence behind her. Scarlett exhaled shakily. Her hands trembled, but she kept her composure. The board members whispered, uncertain. She knew she just made enemies in her own house. That night, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You should have listened to the warning. The Daltons aren't safe now, Scarlett's breath caught. She dialed Matthew immediately, but there was no answer. Panic gripped her chest as she grabbed her coat and ran for the door. What began as guilt had now become something else, a fight for justice, and for the people she had once unknowingly destroyed. And soon, Scarlett would discover that the danger wasn't coming for her company anymore. It was coming for Chloe. Scarlett's car sliced through the wet Boston streets, headlights cutting the fog like knives. Her phone buzzed again, same unknown number. Another message. If you care about the Dalton girl, stay out of this. Her stomach turned. Chloe, she hit the gas. The streets blurred past her until she reached the old neighborhood where Matthew lived. The front door of the small apartment building was half open, the lights flickering. Scarlett burst inside, calling out, "Matthew!" "Chloe!" No answer. Her heart pounded in her chest. She rushed down the hall and pushed open the door. The living room was a mess. A chair knocked over, a plate shattered on the floor, Ben's backpack torn open. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then she heard a voice behind her. "Scarlett." She turned sharply. It was Matthew, limping, a small cut on his forehead. Relief and terror collided in her chest. "Where's Chloe?" she demanded. "She's fine," he said quickly, raising a hand. "She's with the neighbor. Someone tried to break in an hour ago." "I chased them off." Scarlett's voice trembled. "Did you see who it was?" "No, but they weren't here to steal." He picked up a crumpled note from the floor and handed it to her. "They left this." Scarlett unfolded it. The same block letters as before. "You should have stopped." Her throat tightened. "Laura," Matthew frowned. "The woman from your office?" "She's not acting alone," Scarlett said, pacing. "She was working with Elliot Briggs. And someone else. Someone dangerous enough to threaten a child." He stepped closer, his voice low but steady. "Then you're not facing this alone anymore." Scarlett looked up, meeting his eyes. For a moment, the walls between them, guilt, anger, pride, all disappeared. All that remained was fear and determination. "Come with me," she said. "Both of you. You'll stay somewhere safe until this is over." An hour later, they arrived at Scarlett's penthouse. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. Marble floors, a skyline view, warmth. Chloe gasped at the sight of the glittering city beyond the windows. "Is this your house?" she asked softly. Scarlett smiled weakly. "For now, yes. But tonight it's yours too." Ben, still shaken, sat quietly near the couch. Matthew hesitated at the doorway, uncomfortable amidst the luxury. Scarlett noticed. "You don't owe me gratitude," she said. "I owe you peace," he gave a faint smile. "You're a strange woman, Miss Monroe." "Scarlett," she corrected gently. "Just Scarlett." Later that night, as Chloe slept on the couch, Scarlett stood by the window, arms crossed, staring at the city below. Matthew approached quietly, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You should rest," he said. "I can't," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see that little sign. For sale, $20. He took a sip and nodded. "You know, when I worked for your company, I believed in you. I thought you were different from people like Briggs." Scarlett turned to him. "Then I failed you." He met her eyes. "Maybe. But you're trying to fix it now. That counts for something." She smiled faintly, grateful. Then her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time it wasn't a threat. It was a video. Her blood ran cold as she hit play. The footage showed Chloe earlier that evening, at the neighbor's apartment. A man in a hoodie stood across the street, watching the window. The camera panned closer, focusing on the child's face, and then cut abruptly to black. Scarlett dropped the phone, her pulse racing. They were watching her. Matthew snatched the device, his expression darkening. "This isn't random anymore. Someone's following us." Scarlett grabbed her laptop, opening files she'd stored from her investigation. "There's something we missed." Laura mentioned investors in one of her emails. I thought it was just code for her partners, but what if it wasn't? Matthew frowned. "You think this goes beyond your company?" "I think it's bigger than we imagined," she whispered. "And whoever's behind it doesn't just want money, they want silence." Suddenly, a noise from the hallway froze them both. Footsteps, slow, heavy. Scarlett motioned for Matthew to stay quiet. She turned off the lights. The penthouse sank into darkness, lit only by the city glow. The footsteps stopped outside her door. Then, a soft thud. An envelope slid under the door. Matthew stepped forward cautiously, picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a photo. Chloe standing in front of Monroe and Dalton, holding her scooter. On the back, in black ink, "You can't protect everyone." Scarlett's heart pounded. They know where she was. They're watching all of us. Matthew clenched his fists. "Then we go to the police." "No," Scarlett said quickly. "If this ties to corporate fraud, the press will twist everything. They'll turn you into a suspect and Chloe will be exposed." "Then what do we do?" he asked. Scarlett looked toward the skyline, determination replacing fear. "We find proof strong enough to destroy them before they destroy us." Outside, the same black SUV idled in the shadows, engine running. A figure inside lowered his phone and whispered into an earpiece, "They're together now. Proceed with phase 2. And just like that, the game had changed. Scarlett Monroe was no longer the hunter. She was the target. The following morning, Boston was wrapped in mist, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Scarlett hadn't slept. Neither had Matthew. The night had been long and quiet, too quiet, except for the echo of their own thoughts. She sat at her kitchen counter, scrolling through files again. "Every trail leads back to this," she said, pointing at one folder labeled Eastbridge Holdings. "This shell company received millions in consulting fees from Monroe and Dalton. Guess who's listed as a secondary beneficiary?" Matthew leaned over her shoulder. "Elliot Briggs?" Scarlett shook her head slowly. "No, Laura Keene, but that's not the shocking part." She opened another file. "The primary beneficiary is someone named Gregory Monroe." Matthew blinked. "Monroe? Any relation?" Scarlett's throat tightened. "My brother." He stared at her. "You have a brother?" "I had," she said softly. "We haven't spoken in 6 years. He left the company after our father died. I thought he moved abroad." Her voice cracked slightly. "He always hated how I ran things, said I'd turned cold. But if he's behind this—" Matthew placed a hand on her shoulder. "Scarlett, this could be dangerous." She met his eyes, determination blazing. "He's using my name, my company, and people like you suffered for it. I'm done hiding." By noon, they were driving toward an industrial district near the harbor. According to the bank records, Eastbridge Holdings operated from a warehouse there. Scarlett's car rolled to a stop outside the rusted metal building, its windows boarded up. "This feels wrong," Matthew muttered. "Everything about this is wrong," Scarlett replied. They stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and oil. Stacks of crates lined the walls and a single light bulb swung from the ceiling. Scarlett spotted a desk with open ledgers, receipts, and a laptop left on standby. "Stay close," she whispered. She powered on the computer, scrolling through the files. Invoices, wire transfers, offshore accounts, all connecting back to Monroe and Dalton. But one document froze her blood, a signed authorization for payments. Under her name. Matthew looked over her shoulder. "That's your signature." "It's forged," she said, voice shaking. "He used my name to move millions." Suddenly, a sound echoed behind them, a metallic click. They turned slowly. Standing near the door was a man in his 40s. Tall, dark suit, cold eyes, Gregory Monroe. "Hello?" "Sister," he said, smirking. "You finally found me." Scarlett's breath caught. "Greg, what have you done?" "What you couldn't," he replied calmly. "You built the empire, I made it profitable. Do you think the rich stay rich by being honest?" "You ruined lives!" she shouted. "Matthew lost everything because of you." "His daughter." "Collateral damage," Gregory interrupted. "Don't be naive. You always wanted to play the hero. But heroes don't survive in this world." Matthew stepped forward, anger flaring in his eyes. "You're a coward hiding behind her name." Gregory turned to him, smiling thinly. "And you're the mechanic who thought he could challenge a corporation. How's unemployment treating you?" Matthew's fists tightened, but Scarlett placed a hand on his arm. "Don't," she whispered. Gregory sighed. "You should have left it alone, Scar. Now you've dragged this poor man and his kids into something they don't understand." Scarlett's voice trembled with fury. "You're stealing from families. From children, from me. From a company that forgot what it means to fight," he snapped. "I gave people what they deserved, nothing." She took a step closer. "Then I'll take it all back." Gregory chuckled darkly. "No, you won't, because I've already sent copies of every transaction to the media, under your name. By tomorrow morning, you'll be the one under investigation. And this little charity act of yours? Worthless." Matthew's face hardened. "You can't get away with this." "Oh, I already have." He turned to leave, but Scarlett grabbed his arm. "Gregory, stop, please." He looked at her one last time, his expression a mix of arrogance and sorrow. "You always cared too much, sister. That's why you'll lose." Then he disappeared into the fog outside. Back at the penthouse, Scarlett stood in silence, staring out the window. The city lights flickered below, reflecting off her tears. Matthew stood beside her. "We can still stop him," he said quietly. "If we expose the real files before he does." "He's already one step ahead," she murmured. "By tomorrow, the world will think I'm the villain." "Then we change the story," Matthew said firmly. "You said you wanted to make things right. Now's your chance. We'll prove the truth together." Scarlett looked at him, truly seeing him for the first time. Not as an employee or a victim, but as an equal. A man who refused to let darkness win. For the first time in years, she smiled. "You sound like someone who believes in miracles." Matthew returned the smile softly. "Maybe I do now." She placed her hand on his. "Then let's make one happen." Outside on the opposite building, a camera lens focused through the glass. A voice whispered through a radio. "Target confirmed. Upload scheduled for midnight." In just a few hours, everything Scarlett Monroe had built, her company, her reputation, her name, would go up in flames. But what she didn't know was that one of her enemies was about to make a mistake that would change everything. By sunrise, the world already knew. Scarlett Monroe's name flashed across every headline, every news ticker, every social media feed. CEO accused of multi-million fraud. Scarlett Monroe under federal investigation. Cameras swarmed outside her building. The press shouted questions. Flashes lit up the fog. Inside, her phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from board members, lawyers, investors, even old friends she hadn't heard from in years, all demanding explanations. But Scarlett didn't answer. She sat motionless on the floor of her living room, the TV flickering in front of her, replaying her face over and over. She wasn't watching the news, she was watching her downfall. Matthew entered quietly. He carried 2 mugs of coffee, but she didn't even look up. "It's over," she murmured. "They did it. He did it." "Not yet," Matthew said, setting the cups down. "You still have the truth." She shook her head. "The truth doesn't matter when everyone already believes the lie." Matthew crouched beside her. "Then we show them something they can't ignore." Scarlett finally looked at him, eyes red from sleeplessness. "How, Matthew?" "My accounts are frozen. My employees think I'm a criminal, and my brother is somewhere out there waiting for me to drown in the same mess he made." He held her gaze. "Then we find proof he's still moving the money." She frowned. "How? He's too smart." Matthew smiled faintly. "He's smart, but he's arrogant. You said it yourself, he used your name. If he's still transferring funds, we can track them before they're laundered. You have contacts. Someone must still believe in you." Scarlett's mind began to turn again. Contacts, there was one person, a retired cybersecurity expert who'd once consulted for her company. Ethan Cole. She picked up her phone. "Ethan owes me a favor." 2 hours later, they met Ethan in a quiet diner on the outskirts of the city. The man looked like he'd stepped out of a spy novel. Grizzled beard, tired eyes, a laptop that looked older than the cafe itself. "You're in deep, Scarlett," he said after she explained. "And if what you're saying is true, you're not just dealing with corporate theft. This is organized laundering. Can you help me?" she asked. Ethan smirked. "Depends. You still have your access keys?" Scarlett nodded. "Encrypted offline. Then we've got a chance." He set up his laptop, fingers flying across the keys. "If your brother's using Eastbridge Holdings, we'll trace every transaction. But we'll need bait. Something that forces him to move fast and make a mistake." Matthew leaned forward. "What kind of bait?" Ethan grinned. "A fake leak. We release a false audit, showing that the FBI already froze Eastbridge accounts. He'll panic and reroute the funds, exposing the new account location." Scarlett hesitated. "That's risky." "Everything worth saving is," Ethan replied. That night from Scarlett's penthouse, they executed the plan. Ethan uploaded the fabricated audit to an anonymous whistleblower site. Within minutes, encrypted notifications began pinging on his screen. "There," he said, pointing. "He's moving the money now." Scarlett leaned closer, her pulse racing as numbers flickered across the screen. "Where's it going?" Ethan's brow furrowed. "That's odd. He's sending it to an unregistered account in the Caymans. But it's not just his. There's another name attached." Matthew asked, "Who?" Ethan typed furiously, then froze. "Daniel Wexler." Scarlett's heart sank. "My CFO." "Looks like your brother wasn't working alone," Ethan said grimly. "Your company's been bleeding from both ends." Before Scarlett could respond, her phone rang. "Unknown number," she answered cautiously. "Hello?" a calm voice replied. "You just made a very big mistake, Scarlett." "Gregory," she hissed. "I told you to stop," he said coldly. "But now you've dragged others into this. That man you trust, Ethan? He won't help you when the police arrive in 10 minutes. What are you talking about?" "Check your front door," Scarlett turned, dread filling her chest. Through the penthouse window, flashing red and blue lights reflected off the glass. Sirens wailed closer. Matthew ran to the window. "They're coming here!" Ethan slammed his laptop shut. He must have traced the connection. He reported this as cyber intrusion. Scarlett's voice broke. "He's framing me again." Ethan pulled a flash drive from the computer and shoved it into her hand. "Everything you need is in here. The proof, the transfers, all of it. Don't lose it." "What about you?" she asked. "I'll buy you time," he said, gathering his things. "Now go." The pounding on the door started seconds later. "Scarlett Monroe, open up." "Federal agents." Matthew grabbed her arm. "There's a service elevator in the garage. Let's move." They sprinted through the hallway, hearts racing, as agents shouted behind them. Scarlett's heels echoed against the floor, her pulse matching every step. When they reached the elevator, she turned to Matthew, breathless. "If they catch us, they won't," he said firmly. "Not tonight." The elevator doors closed just as the agents burst into the hall. Scarlett leaned against the wall, clutching the flash drive to her chest. Everything was falling apart. Her company, her name, her life. But for the first time, she wasn't running from guilt. She was running toward the truth, and she wouldn't stop until she cleared Matthew's name and Chloe's future. When they reached the basement garage, Matthew turned off the lights of her car and handed her the keys. "Where to now?" Scarlett looked at him, determination shining through the exhaustion. "To end this." But as they pulled away, a dark SUV emerged from the shadows, following silently. Inside, Gregory Monroe watched them go, a cruel smile forming on his lips. "Let her run," he murmured. "The fall is always harder when you think you're free." The storm hit Boston just before midnight. Rain hammered the streets, washing neon reflections across puddles like melted glass. Scarlett gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, her eyes locked on the road. Matthew sat beside her, glancing at the rearview mirror every few seconds. Behind them, headlights flickered through the rain. That same black SUV keeping its distance but never disappearing. "They're still following us," he muttered. "I know," Scarlett said quietly. "But I'm done running." She drove toward the harbor, to an old storage facility she'd once purchased under her company name, a place no one knew existed except her. When they arrived, the storm's roar drowned everything. The warehouse loomed in the darkness like a skeleton of her past. Inside, the air smelled of rust and salt. Scarlett turned on a small generator, its hum echoing in the vast emptiness. She connected Ethan's flash drive to a laptop, praying the data hadn't been corrupted. Lines of code, transactions, account numbers, it was all there. The proof. Every stolen cent, every false report, every signature forged by Gregory and Daniel. Matthew leaned over her shoulder. "We can send this straight to the FBI from here." Scarlett shook her head. "No. If we send it now, Gregory will intercept it. He has contacts everywhere. Law enforcement, banks, media. We need to make it public, live. Somewhere they can't silence it." Matthew frowned. "How?" She looked at him, her mind racing. "There's a global finance summit tomorrow morning. My company sponsors it. It's broadcast internationally. I can access the feed remotely. If we upload this data during the live stream, they won't be able to stop it. Everyone will see the truth." He nodded slowly. "Then that's our plan." But before they could act, a sound cut through the storm, tires screeching outside. Scarlett's heart skipped. The SUV. She closed the laptop. "They found us." Matthew grabbed a wrench from a nearby workbench and positioned himself near the door. "Stay behind me." The warehouse door groaned open. 3 men entered, dark suits, guns drawn. Rain spilled in behind them. One of them stepped forward, smirking. "Miss Monroe, your brother sends his regards." Scarlett's pulse pounded in her ears. Matthew's jaw clenched. "If you're here for her, you'll have to go through me." The man laughed. "That's the idea." Before he could raise his weapon, Matthew swung the wrench, striking him hard across the arm. The gun clattered to the floor. Scarlett ducked behind a crate, heart racing as chaos erupted. Thunder crashed outside, masking the sounds of struggle. Fists, footsteps, shouts. One of the men grabbed Scarlett by the wrist, yanking her up. "Give me the drive." She kicked, twisting away, and the flash drive slipped from her pocket, skidding across the floor. Matthew lunged for it, but another man caught him from behind, pinning him down. "Matthew!" Scarlett screamed. The first man aimed his gun at him. One more move and he's dead. Scarlett froze, breath ragged. Her mind spun. The flash drive, it was everything. Proof of the truth, proof of their innocence. But in that moment, all she could see was Matthew bleeding on the floor, trying to reach for her hand. She swallowed hard. "Stop, I'll give it to you." The man lowered his gun slightly. "Toss it here." Scarlett picked up the flash drive slowly, then met Matthew's eyes. There was pain in them, but also something else, faith. He shook his head ever so slightly. "Don't." Scarlett took a deep breath. "You want it?" she said. "Come and get it." Then, with all her strength, she hurled the drive into the generator's open vent. Sparks erupted instantly, blue light bursting across the floor. The machine exploded with a blinding flash. The men stumbled back, shouting. Scarlett grabbed Matthew's arm. "Run!" They dashed toward the side exit, coughing from smoke. Rain pouring over them as they burst outside into the alley. Behind them, the warehouse was engulfed in flickering fire and smoke. Matthew collapsed against the wall, gasping. "The proof, it's not gone," she said between breaths. "Ethan made copies. It's synced to a cloud backup. We can still broadcast it." He looked at her, drenched and trembling. "You risked everything." Scarlett smiled faintly. "So did you." Suddenly, headlights cut through the rain again, a sleek black car pulling up at the alley entrance. Gregory stepped out, umbrella in hand, calm and composed despite the storm. "Bravo, sister," he called out. "Always so dramatic." Scarlett stepped forward. "It's over, Greg." "Oh, I don't think so," he said smoothly. "You see, I'm the only one with a clean record now. You're a wanted felon. Your accounts are frozen. Your assets seized. You have nothing left." "Except the truth," she replied. Gregory chuckled darkly. "Truth doesn't pay lawyers." Matthew moved to stand beside her. "Maybe not. But it saves people like Chloe, like us." Gregory's smile vanished. "You should have stayed invisible, Dalton. You and your little family." Scarlett took a step closer, rain soaking her hair, her voice shaking but strong. "If you ever go near them again, I swear I'll drag you to hell myself." For a brief second, Gregory's mask cracked. "You've changed, Scar." "No," she said softly. "I finally remembered who I was." Gregory's eyes hardened. He turned away, walking toward his car. "Then I suppose we'll let the world decide." The car sped off into the storm, leaving Scarlett and Matthew standing in the cold rain, hearts pounding. Soaked and exhausted but alive. As they drove away, Matthew looked over at her. "You could have given him the drive." "You didn't." Scarlett smiled faintly. "Because some things are worth more than survival." He nodded, watching the city lights through the rain. "So what now?" She exhaled slowly. "Now, we finish what we started." Tomorrow the world would wake to headlines written by Gregory Monroe, but by nightfall Scarlett would write her own. The next morning Boston rose under grey skies. The storm had passed, but the city still glistened, streets shining with rainwater and broken reflections of neon lights. The world believed Scarlett Monroe was guilty. The headlines had doubled overnight. Former CEO flees fraud investigation. Scarlett Monroe on the run. But as the city judged her, Scarlett was already preparing her final move. She sat in a dim warehouse office across the river, her laptop open on a makeshift table. Beside her, Matthew adjusted an old radio transmitter Ethan had found. The backup files had survived. Everything was ready. "Are you sure about this?" Matthew asked, glancing at her. "Once you do this, there's no going back." Scarlett's eyes were steady, her voice calm. "I've already lost everything that mattered. Except the truth," he nodded quietly. "Then let's give it to them." At exactly 9 a.m., the Global Finance Summit began in downtown Boston. Inside the glittering convention hall, Gregory Monroe stood on stage wearing a dark suit and that same confident smile that had once charmed investors worldwide. Cameras flashed. The world was watching, but so was Scarlett. From her remote location, she accessed the live feed with Ethan's encrypted keys. The broadcast showed Gregory addressing the crowd. "Today," he said proudly, "we restore trust in business, in integrity, and in the Monroe name." The screen behind him flickered. His image froze. Then the logo of Monroe and Dalton dissolved into static. Scarlett's voice cut through the feed, calm and resolute. "My name is Scarlett Monroe, and everything you've heard about me is a lie." Gasps erupted across the hall. Cameras turned. The audience whispered in shock. Scarlett continued, her voice echoing around the globe. "For months, this company has been used for illegal financial laundering. The people responsible are not nameless thieves. They are people I trusted, people who wore the same suits, smiled in the same meetings, and stole from families who worked for me. This is the truth. The screen flashed again, files, documents, account transfers, emails. Gregory's name. Laura's, Daniel's, every detail laid bare for millions to see. One of those families, Scarlett said, her tone breaking slightly, was the Dalton family. Matthew Dalton was fired unjustly. His daughter, Chloe, tried to sell her scooter to buy food. While I lived in comfort, they lived in hunger. That's the cost of corruption. Not just money, but lives. In the control room, Gregory's face drained of color. "Shut it down," he barked. Technicians scrambled, but the system was locked. Scarlett's voice grew stronger. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'll never let the innocent carry the blame for my mistakes. If this ruins me, so be it. But it ends here, today." The feed went black. In the warehouse, Scarlett sat motionless, her eyes glistening. For a long moment, there was silence. Then Matthew let out a slow breath. "You did it." She turned to him, smiling faintly. "We did it." Outside, sirens wailed again, but this time they weren't coming for her. The police had raided the summit. Gregory was led away in handcuffs, his mask finally shattered before the world. Laura and Daniel followed soon after. The empire of deceit had collapsed. Days later, the air in Boston felt different, calmer, cleaner. Scarlett sat in a small park by the river, watching Chloe and Ben playing nearby. Chloe racing her shiny new red scooter, Ben laughing as he tried to keep up. Matthew approached, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Still black, right?" She smiled. Still black. They sat quietly, watching the children. For the first time in years, Scarlett didn't feel like a CEO or a criminal or a symbol. She felt human again. "Do you ever miss it?" Matthew asked. "The power, the boardrooms, the spotlight." She shook her head. "Power built on pain isn't power. It's poison." He nodded slowly. "So, what now?" Scarlett glanced toward the river. "Now I build something better, smaller, honest, maybe a foundation, for single parents, for families like yours. Maybe that's where I start again." Matthew smiled softly. "Chloe would like that." Scarlett turned to him. "You gave me something I'd forgotten existed, Matthew. Hope. And you gave it back to us," he replied gently. As the sun broke through the clouds, a golden light spilled across the park. Chloe rode her scooter past them, her laughter ringing through the air. Scarlett watched, her eyes glistening. "That sound," she whispered, "is worth more than every dollar I ever made." Matthew smiled. "Then you're finally rich again." She laughed quietly, resting her head back against the bench, the weight of her past lifting like mist after a storm. For years, Scarlett Monroe had built walls of glass and steel to keep the world out. But it took one little girl, a red scooter, and a father's love to tear them down, and to remind her that redemption isn't earned in boardrooms or headlines. It's found in the quiet moments when you choose to do what's right, even when no one's watching. I'm John Parker, and that was Invisible Hearts. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, leave your like, and tell us from which city or country you're listening. Sometimes the smallest act of love can rewrite the biggest mistakes. See you in the next story.